Well, today is the annual World No Tobacco Day celebration. Didn't you know it? Actually, I think the largest problem with tobacco use is not regular folks buying it in regular stores, but contraband tobacco being sold unregulated, untaxed, and unlimited to whoever shows up by contraband manufacturers on Indian reserves. It's not just my opinion. I think it's the fact. And joining me now is Gary Grant, a spokesman for the Coalition Against Contraband Tobacco and a 39-year police officer. Welcome to the program.
I like 39-year-old better.
You know what? Help me out here. I mean, every year the government's put out a big self-praising press release. They're going to take on tobacco this way. They're going to raise taxes that way. But really the big elephant in the room are these on Indian Reserve smoke shacks that not only aren't taxed or regulated, they're illegal to begin with.
Well, the RCMP have estimated that about 90 to 93% of the contraband cigarettes that are sold in Canada, particularly in the provinces of Quebec and Ontario, come from native reserves, whether it's Kaninakwi, Akwesasne, or Six Nations. And they're manufactured there. Some of the factories have been there for years and years. They do abide by the federal excise laws and pay their taxes to manufacture the cigarettes, but it's supposed to be sold and consumed at the native lands. Once people start rolling in or they start smuggling them across to the provinces and selling them across the province via a network of organized crime gangs, it becomes illegal. Plus, there's 50, the RCMP have estimated, factories in Canada, illegal manufacturing plants on native land that don't pay any type of excise, federal, provincial, anything. They're just illegally operated factories, and they're adding to the problem. And it's costing billions of dollars to taxpayers, and it's leading our young people to smoke because they're getting cigarettes sold to them by criminals around their schools, at their parks, shopping malls, and whatnot. They don't ask any ID. They're just there to sell cheap, illegal cigarettes. The kids are buying them and start smoking.
Well, and that's the thing. It's not even the lost taxes or even the total lack of quality control or what's in the ingredients. It's not just the stealing of the intellectual property of legitimate cigarette companies. It's the fact that to go from reserve to the city, well, the people who are involved by necessity are organized criminals. And so it's not just, a lowly Indian person trying to make a buck. They're teaming up with serious biker gangs, truly violent people, the mob in some cases. Tell me a bit about that. How much money do you think organized crime makes off these contraband cigarettes every year?
Well, you know what? The last time I looked, they haven't turned their books over to us to have a look. But I will tell you that many of the law-abiding citizens on the reserves are intimidated by the criminal element. Right. Just like there's criminals in the rest of Canada, there's criminals on the native reserves. They see how lucrative this is. So what they'll do is manufacture the illegal cigarettes. They'll smuggle it across to Ontario or to Quebec, across the river, or they'll manufacture it in Six Nations. And you're right. They'll give it to biker gangs. They'll give it to different types of mobsters. The RCMP has estimated 175 criminal organized gangs. And the definition of organized crime, of course, is 3 or more people involved in a criminal operation. But we're talking hardcore criminals that are reinvesting those proceeds, those millions and millions, probably close to billions of dollars that they're making from this into drugs, into weapons, and even human smuggling. And, they're preying on young people. So it's a real problem.
Gary, when people think of big tobacco, they think of fancy CEOs from the southern United States, millionaires. But, a few years ago, I worked for the Ontario Korean Businessmen's Association, just helped on a project. And I realized that actually folks who work in the cigarette business are corner store operators, families who work, 18 hours a day. And if we don't crack down on the contraband cigarettes, that's basically every cigarette sold illegally is one cigarette that these law-abiding, tax-paying, people who really hold our community together. I mean, I love convenience corner stores, and those are the guys who are the ones truly losing the money because they're losing the sales. I got one last question for you, because we're out of time. I mean, here we have, on the one hand, who cares about the for-profit tobacco companies? Very few people are sympathetic to them, although I think I'm one of them. But I think the true victims here, besides the kids who are buying cigarettes without being ID'd for age or ID in other ways, I think the true victims here are the corner store convenience operators. Why is the government not coming to their aid? Is it because they're afraid of another Oka if they try and take on these Indian illegal manufacturers?
That's the question we ask, Ezra. We have these hardworking people Korean Business Association and others. They're working long hours every day. They have small profit margins. They count on cigarettes or gas to make a living. They're held under stringent regulations in Ontario. Don't dare sell a cigarette to a minor. Don't show cigarettes. And if you do, we're going to nail you to the cross. That's fine. That's all well and good. They should do that. They should stop kids from smoking. But the same convenience store workers, or usually our owners, are looking across the street and seeing some guy sell it out of the back of a trunk, no questions asked, with impunity, and the governments do have to take action.
Right now we're showing pictures of these so-called smoke shacks all across Ontario and Quebec. So it's not even like they're hiding. Like, these aren't people stealing around at night selling them out of the trunk of their car. They have these permanent buildings and structures. They're advertising openly, and the cops let it happen. I think that anyone who says, oh, just one more regulation or tax on the legitimate industry is trying to distract from their inaction against the criminals.
Well, there's 300 smoke shacks. The provincial government has done something. In Quebec, they've taken it even a step further to make it possible for provincial and municipal police to seize and investigate, because formerly it could only be RCMP. RCMP are doing a great job, but it's a drop in the bucket that they're catching. Municipal police didn't have any power. In Quebec now they've passed a law that allows municipal police officers to seize, investigate, lay charges, and the cities get to keep some of the fine money, which kind of motivates cities and police services. And Ontario has promised to do much the same. Last year they passed a law that indicated that you could be charged for possession of contraband cigarettes. But the federal government has promised that there'd be 50 more officers. This was in the last election campaign, that they would dedicate 50 more CMP officers to fight the contraband problem, that they would have minimum sentences for repeat offenders, and we want them to follow through on those promises, because they should be inspecting, they should be and enforcing the laws all across Canada for the sale and distribution of tobacco. And right now they're only doing it in part of Canada.
We got to have you back on the show because we're out of time today. Thanks for coming on the show and showing us where the real problem is. Appreciate your time.
My pleasure,
folks,
Ezra.
New York is the city where you can do anything